Another really important capability of pivot tables is the option to insert custom calculated fields. And calculated fields basically just allow you to create brand new measures based on any existing numerical fields. So in this case, I've gone into my Analyze tab, into the Fields, Items, and Sets dropdown, selected Calculated Field, and then from there you have this dialog box that allows you to give your new field any name you choose, and then define a calculation based on any existing fields. So you'll see your field list right here within the dialog box, and you can simply double-click items to pull them into the formula. So in this case, I've added a new calculated field called percent students that's equal to the student population divided by the total population. Now, a very important pro tip on this slide: don't calculate your rate metrics, things like click-through rate, cost per click, sales per day, whatever it might be. Don't make those calculations in your raw data sheet. Use calculated fields to do so. This is exactly what calculated fields are designed to do, and it ensures that those fields are calculated properly, no matter how your data is rolled up or sliced and diced. So let's hop over to the pivot and actually practice building some of these. All right, so first things first, for those of you who have been following along, I'm just going to change the view that we're looking at here a bit. We no longer need country, so I'm going to pull that out. And instead of analyzing the data by genre, I'm going to drop in title as my row labels instead. Then in addition to revenue, let's pull in budget. So now we're looking at sum of budget, sum of gross revenue. We can keep this year filter. We're just looking at a 5-year sample right now. And then last but not least, let's just format both of these fields as currency with no decimal places. And there you have it. So now my task is to create some new calculated fields based on these budget and revenue numbers. And to do that, I can go into my pivot table tools, Analyze tab, drop into this Fields, Items, and Sets menu, and choose the first option, Calculated Field. Now this launches the Calculated Field dialog box, and here's where I can add a name to my new metric and define the formula itself. And looking here, you can see all of my pivot table fields listed out right here. So essentially, I can build a formula to create a new field built upon any of these numerical metrics currently included in my data set. So the first field that I want to create is a metric called profit. And the formula here will be pretty simple. It will just be the gross revenue, and I can double click to populate it in my formula bar, minus the budget. And by default, any fields that are included in a calculated field formula will use the default summarization mode of a sum. So this is the sum of gross revenue minus the sum of budget. Even if I'm looking at budget as a count or an average or a min or a max, as far as calculated fields are concerned, these will always treat the fields as a sum. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the implications of that note in one of the upcoming lectures, but important to just keep that in mind. So in this case, super simple, new field called profit. Profit equals revenue minus budget. Press OK. And there you go. It populates right here in the pivot. It shows up in the field list as a new field, just like any other raw column that came from my raw data. And as you can see, it's populating properly. So 10 Days in a Madhouse had a budget of $12 million. Somehow only generated $14,616. Apparently didn't do very well, so the profit is negative just under 12 million. And then now that I have this calculated field, I can use it and manipulate it and sort and filter on it just like any other field. So I can sort my titles descending by the sum of profit now, and this adds a whole different layer of insight that I otherwise couldn't have easily accessed. And this tells me that Jurassic World was the most profitable film over this 5-year period, generating a profit of $502 million. That's a lot of money. Followed by The Avengers, Hunger Games, Despicable Me, and so on and so forth. So it's important to call out that even though profit is a calculated field that's built on budget and revenue, I don't need to have the budget and revenue columns here in the pivot for this calculated field to operate. In fact, if I drop budget and revenue out, this is still going to function exactly as we'd expect it to. So let's go with a second example and dive back into our calculated field options. And why don't we create another one called ROI, or return on investment. And it's going to be kind of a similar calculation, except this time I want to take the ratio of gross revenue divided by budget. So the ratio of revenue to budget. Press OK. And this one I'll format as a percentage with no decimal places. And what this ROI field now tells me is for every dollar that went into the budget for a film, how much revenue was returned. So in this case, there's a 4.35 to 1 return on the budget for Jurassic World versus a 2.83 or 283% return for the Avengers. So just another way to create a new calculation to provide a different lens or different layer of insight to this data set, because the sum of profit tells one story in terms of the volume of profit, whereas ROI paints a slightly different profitability picture in terms of the ratio. So now if we sort the titles descending by ROI, we get a completely different story. So in terms of the percent return, the Gallows is actually our strongest performer by far. So there you go, quick primer on using calculated fields to add brand new metrics and insights to your pivot tables.